The Longines Spirit Titanium might be my new favourite to watch. Welcome back to Time in the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison, as always, and I need to stop touching this part of the microphone because I've discovered that every time I do that, there's like this popping sound that comes out the mic. So if I do that, please tell me off in the comments. But today, we're going to discuss the Longines Spirit. Now, tool watches cover a vast variety of different categories. You've got submariner, diving watches, shall we say. You've got pilot's watches, which technically is what this is. And you've got the original, the GOAT, so to speak, which is, of course, field watches. So basically the definition of a tool watch is just a watch that does a certain job, that serves a certain purpose and does it well. For example, diving watches with a rotating bezel serve the purpose when you're underwater. But this watch in particular, this Longines Spirit, is technically, well, I say technically a pilot's watch. But in my opinion, I think it's more of a field watch. Let's begin with the specs of this watch, and as we cover the specs of this watch, I'll discuss why I think it's more of a tool watch, of a field watch, rather than a pilot's watch. So, beginning with the case diameter, because that's quite a good starting point, and it kind of favors my side of the argument quite heavily, actually. So this comes in at 40 millimeters in diameter, which is fantastic on the wrist. I have 6.5 inch wrists, and I would say 40 millimeters to 41 mil is just the perfect sizing for me. But if you think about what pilot's watches are used for and the history of pilot's watches, you'll see that normally they are a hell of a lot bigger than 40 millimeters. Let's take the IWC Big Pilot for an example. The original IWC Big Pilot was 46.3 millimeters or 46.2 millimeters. Then it got slimmed down to 43 millimeters. This is still a hell of a lot bigger than this model, and I would say that is more of a true pilot's watch because you would never take that out in the field with you, so to speak, but you might take this out. The thickness on this model is 12.2 millimeters, and it comes in at 61 grams in weight. It is really, really light, and this is because it's titanium and it also has that NATO strap on it. Now, there's a couple of points to my argument here, so let's start from the beginning. Let's start with titanium. As a field watch, as an outdoors watch, you want to be as durable as possible because you might get slammed off of rocks, you'll be in the mud, you'll be running up hills. That is what a field watch is for. And titanium is a more durable metal than steel. It doesn't scratch as easily, it is lighter, it is more robust, and it's also harder to work with, just on a side note. But this makes it more of a field watch to me. Next up, we have that really nice NATO strap, which is a little bit stiff, but I reckon with wear over time, it'd get that little bit softer and that little nicer to wear. But what I was going to say is classically back in the day when pilot straps or pilot's watches were getting supplied to the military and obviously to the pilots of the sky, they had leather straps, calfskin leather. That is the classic strap that they were always sort of given back in the day. And this can be seen on most pilots' watches across the board. They normally have that leather strap, but this, of course, has a NATO strap. Now, NATO straps to me are a lot more durable and lighter than most other straps and don't wear and tear over time as much as maybe calfskin leather would do. So, in my eyes, it's a lot more of a field watch than a pilot's watch. The case on this watch is absolutely beautiful. I have to say that because it's true. It's dark, it's stealthy, it has a combination of brushed and polished on it. It just is a really good looking, handsome case. And I think it's important that when a brand do something right like this, when they get a design trait just spot on, that we praise them for it, because you can be guaranteed that if they designed it slightly wrong, we would say something. So Longines, well done. And now we move on to the crown on this model, and the crown kind of contradicts my argument slightly. But hear me out. I've got a counter argument for that. So back in the day when these watch brands were supplying the military, and the military were supplying, of course, the pilots with these watches, the cases were a lot bigger. And because the cases were a lot bigger, the crowns were also that little bit bigger. I say that little bit bigger. Actually, they were a lot bigger than what you can see here. Now, the reason for this is because when pilots have big, thick gloves on, they need to easily change the time. And the bigger the crown, the easier this is to do. It's quite prevalent if you look at the IWC Big Pilot. It has an iconic onion crown, which is pretty massive and designed specifically for pilots. Now, when we look at military watches or field watches, the opposite effect kind of takes place. The crown is a lot smaller and a lot more dainty so that it's not damaged. So if you can imagine you're playing Call of Duty and you're climbing a hill in Call of Duty to get a good sniper line on the bad guys, they'd have little watches so that if they tripped, they fell, they wouldn't damage that crown. And that's why they're smaller with military watches. Now, when we look at this watch, you can see a kind of hybrid taking place. You've got the pilot's inspired sort of shape of the crown, but it's small enough to be more of a field watch. What do I think of it? I think it's more of a field watch, but I'm probably biased. You know, there's a weird thing in the clothing industry, but also the watch industry about trying things on. Sometimes you can see things online and you think, you know, it's just not for me. And then you go into the store or you try it on digitally online and you think, wow, that really suits me. So what I want you to do is head to the Chisholm Hunter website where we're actually authorized retailers of Longines watches and try out our new digital try-it-on feature. All you need to do is take a picture of your wrist and automatically our website, our Chisholm Hunter website, will work its magic and Photoshop this watch on your wrist, sizing it up perfectly. So you'll know if it fits. If it doesn't, that's fine. There's tons of other watches to choose from, but it's a pretty good feature. Moving on to the dial of this watch. The dial is a real thing of beauty, actually. There's only one thing that I would probably change about this dial, and the rest I would leave it. And honestly, that's quite rare for me because I'm an absolute snob. So when we look at this dial, they have pretty big, bold numerals filled with super Luminova. And at the top of each numeral, there's a little diamond that's kind of cut out of the face of this watch, adding a little bit of depth to the dial, which is pretty stunning. The dial on this model is in matte black, and the gold Longines logo and the gold coating to the numerals and hands looks great against this matte black. It looks very classical. If you think of pilots' watches nowadays, they're not used for pilots normally. It's people like you, it's people like me that buy these watches, and it's kind of more of a tribute to what they used to be used for. And that's why pilots' watches use kind of classical colors, classical straps, as kind of a tribute to the heritage of these pilots' watches, which is a nice touch. But personally, to make it more readable, to make it more functional, to make it more of a tool watch, I would change that color to silver. I just think it would stand out that little bit more against that black dial and look that little bit more readable. The Longines logo is positioned really comfortably at the 12 o'clock mark with, of course, the word automatic below it because this is an automatic watch. And the iconic 5 stars of the Spirit collection is positioned at 6 o'clock with chronometer written just below it because this is a COSC certified chronometer. And by the way, for £2,500, that is pretty damn awesome. Now, if you want the bracelet version of this watch, it is available if you pay a little bit more money, but I would probably go for the NATO strap. I think it looks cool. And now, it of course is time for the wrist check. This is my favorite part of the video because I love seeing all the weird and wonderful watches that you guys have on. Please pause this video right now. Head down to the comments, put what watch you have on and where you got it. Hopefully it's Chisholm Hunter. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button. I have the Omega Seamaster on, the Great White. I'm actually taking this watch to Norway with me because I think it fits the sort of polar snowy vibe. Especially as a photographer, it looks really cool. Anyway, on with the video. Another little detail that I love about this dial, before we go into the Super Luminova, which is featured on the hands and of course the numerals, is that splash of red on the second hand. I love it when brands add a splash of color, have some fun with the dial. It just makes the watch so much more sporty, so much more exciting, and a little bit more fresh and young. Having said that, I do think the red would go better with the silver, just in terms of design, but that's just a me thing. Now, as you can see on this watch, the lume shines really, really bright, and it's almost like a cyan blue. It's a really nice color of lume. This is a question for you guys out there, but do you prefer the classic green lume, or do you prefer this kind of new cyan blue that's coming out in the watches nowadays? However, no matter how good the lume is in this model, it will never be as bright as a bigger watch. If you can imagine the IWC Big Pilot 46 or the IWC Big Pilot 43, they're bigger watches at their core so they can fit more lume into their numerals and into their hands. Therefore, it will be that little bit brighter. So it kind of plays into my argument that this is more of a field watch. And now we'll quickly cover the movement of this watch before we get into my overall thoughts as to why this is a field watch and whether I'd get one. The movement in this model is the in-house caliber L888.4. It's a self-winding mechanical movement beating at a frequency of 25,200 VPH. It has a monocrystalline silicon balance spring and a power reserve of approximately 72 hours. It is of course COSC certified, and the movement is totally exclusive to Longines. This full package comes in for £2,500. Now that is with the NATO strap that we have on it at the moment, and that's what I would personally go for. And for your money, you were getting a hell of a lot of watch. I mean, you're getting a COSC certified movement. You're getting technically what is a hybrid between a pilot's and a field watch. You're getting a titanium case with polished and brushed metal on there, which looks extremely handsome. Now, no matter what you see this watch as, whether you're like me and see it more as a field watch, or you're like Longines and see it more of a pilot's watch, you can't deny that it is a brilliant tool watch with a hybrid functionality thrown in there, because it has kind of the best of both worlds. Sometimes pilots' watches can be pretty polarizing because of the big features, and sometimes tool watches can be pretty polarizing because they're really, really small. Whereas this kind of fits in between. And actually, if I were to look at a tool watch today or a field watch today and have a little bit more of a budget, this is where I'd be looking. And that is the Longines Spirit Titanium. Give us a follow on Chisholm Hunter Watches if you want sneak previews of behind the scenes. Thank you guys so much for the support, as always. Let me know what you think of the new setup. You guys seemed to like it last time, so let me know if you still do or you wanted to switch back to the normal setup. And yeah, see you in a couple of days.